economy of the 19th century. 1960 to 1970, up to 2000, we were under the 19th century, 20th century issue. But right now we're in the 21st century. So the global economic dimension dynamics have gone far, far deep. Then in the 60s to 2000, the global capitalism practice globally is quite different from what we are having currently. Capitalism has gone in a viral way that many economies around the world are not feeling the heat of exploitation as well as the manipulation of capitalist systems. What I'm bringing the issue of global capitalism into the dimension is that many of us be able to understand that what was happening during colonialism, post-colonialism, and at the time of our independence in terms of the global economy is quite different. So if you are mentioning the growth that we recorded in 1960 to 1970 to 1980, you'll be far. Those indicators are quite different than what we have right now, because we are in the 21st century where global economy have gone deep with tech and other different aspects of the economy coming forward to shape global economy. So, and Nigeria cannot be isolated from global economy. At the point of our independence, at the point of getting independent, capitalism was not as strong as what it is today. At that point in time, the new liberal policy that was in place was just coming up in late 80s. But right now, neoliberal policy have gone so deep to the point that emerging economies, colonized nations like Nigeria, are having it very, very difficult to even count when it comes to their growth. So we must establish that fact that what has happened in 1960, the economic record that we record, the growth that we record at that point in time, cannot be compared to what it is today, because at that point in time, global capitalism was not as strong, was not as viral, was not as dangerous as that point in time. But right now, global economy is so dangerous to the point that any country that wants to succeed, whether be a capitalist or you are house. But at that point in time, during our independent era, we are seeing between a socialist mixture of economy, where the regional government were practicing what they want to do. But at this point in time, which regional government do you think they are practicing what they want to do? Where capitalism is everywhere across the world. So that's why I'm bringing this point that the growth we experienced at that time, we appreciate it, we acknowledge it. But at this point in time, the growth we also are achieving at this point in time, we also need to appreciate it and praise it. But the different dimensions, the different environment at that point in time are quite wide. The gap between the environment at that point in time, 1960 to 70 to 80, is different from what we have at this point in time. Also, we also need to consider the indicators at that point. How many are we in 1960? What is the level of our population? What is the level of our civil service? What is the level of private involvement in Nigerian economy at that time? They are quite different from what we have today. So, for me, we need to appraise both periods in a way that we need to also understand that there was a global shift that has happened now that has affected Nigerian growth, unlike what we had in the past.
Okay, so the global shift, when you look at global economies and of course its impact on developing nations, it's a major factor that has actually brought us to this point that we find ourselves as a nation. And also, when you say that our population growth in the 1960s, in the 80s, in the 70s and the 90s is nothing compared to what we have at the moment. Indeed, the population has really grown so well, and it's supposed to be a blessing and not a curse. Are you, by implication, saying that as we advance the course of our independence as a nation from colonialism, the growth we're making or recording, even in the years to come, are still going to be insignificant?
Very interesting. I really like the way you put it, because in the first place, we must understand, for me, global economy has a way of shaping individual nation economy.
Right.
And global economy is in one direction. What is that direction of global economy? Capitalism. As far as capitalism is concerned, Nigeria is not yet a full capitalist state. So that's why we don't have the benefit of enjoying the growth that is expected from a full capitalist state. That's why we see that if they are mentioning Nigerian economy with Egypt, if they are mentioning Nigerian economy with South Africa, they will tell you that those two countries I've just mentioned are already a full capitalist state. And that's why you see that the economic growth is on the high side. And you also mention of public and private sector participation in the economy. In Nigerian case, even though we are having an emerging private sector participation in the economy, we are not yet there. We still have problem of informal sector. Just recently, we are beginning to talk about circular economy. So all these things still holding us back to be able to record a bountiful growth in our economy. And come to talk of it, the major issue that everybody is complaining about why this economy is not growing is tied to one thing. What is that? Corruption. But many people are forgetting that corruption is not just a Nigerian thing. Corruption is a global, worldwide phenomenon. It is there in the US, it is there in the UK, but it depends on how a nation manages. That will also depend on how the economy will grow. And that will also depend on how the economy will develop. And that will also depend on how it will translate to a favorable, economic condition for citizens, residents, and all the people that live in that particular country. But in our own case, corruption has denied us the desirable, sustainable economic growth that we all look for. And that's why I see all those politicians talking. I'm one of those people that are least interested in what politicians are talking about our independence, because they are part and parcel of the corrupt practices. They are part and parcel of the corrupt indicators. They are part and parcel of the people who are fueling corruption one way or the other. So when a politician come and say, APC have not done this, just know that they are just saying the other side of the coin. They are part and parcel of APC. They have been there since 2000 till now. So let's just face the reality that, one, what has shaped our economy is that it is under global capitalist body. Two, our indigenous practices in our economic policies and principles has also shaped our growth, which is what based on corruption. Then thirdly, because of self-interest of individuals who are managing our economic affairs, this also contributes to the level of growth that we're having. And lastly, is the level of private sector participation in our economy, alongside government participation in the economy on the other hand.
All right, Mr. Adefolarin, thanks for that insight. But, just to take you aback a little bit, you said something about the Egypt, economy, South African economy, trying to compare it, side by side, what is obtainable here in Nigeria. And you think that the South African economy and Egypt's, economy is actually thriving more than, our own economy right here in Nigeria. And that is, as a result of the capitalist approach that they have adopted. I'd like you to speak to this. First of all, break it down in very clear terms in such a way that the average man on the street who's monitoring this conversation now would understand very clearly what you mean by a capitalist, driven economy. And secondly, Mr. Adefolarin, what exactly do we need to do to adopt that approach? I mean, if it's working for other countries, then why not give it a shot in Nigeria?
Very interesting question, I would say, Omete. One thing that made it different is this. In Egypt and in South Africa, they allow public-private sector to strive in a way that the support that government is giving to the informal sector in Nigeria is very, very little. You know what those countries do in their own economy? They allow countries to emerge and come out of informal, become formal. But in Nigerian case, we prefer to keep our informal sector to remain informal for as long as whoever that is in power wants it to be, or as long as the ministry of the economy of the government wants it to be. What I'm trying to draw out is this. In South Africa and Egypt, the government is not leaving the entire economic sector alone for the private sector to strive. They also have a way of contributing effectively, not just by policy development, not just by policy implementation, but by actually engaging in the economy one way or the other. For instance, Egypt in the last 10 years have been able to develop infrastructure facility that goes beyond just city capital. What I mean by city capital is, in Nigerian case, we concentrate our development infrastructure in our city capital. But in Egypt, for instance, they expand beyond the city capital into the rural areas where resources can be found and where, montage or what we call cottage industries factory can be established. In Nigerian case, you hear government say they are giving money to businesses, they are giving money to the small businesses. But at the end of the day, you find out the money they are giving to them, these guys are just putting the money in that business and they are running on losses. But in those countries that I've mentioned, when it comes to power, they enjoy sustainable electricity power. When it comes to road infrastructure, they enjoy clean, cool road that allows smooth logistics. When it comes to security, they enjoy security that allows supply chain to be effective and efficient. Then when it comes to access to funding, the government in Egypt and South Africa is not just giving their people money. They also allow the banking sector, the financial institution to give out money for businesses. But in the case of Nigeria, how many banks can give money to small business in Nigeria? It is Development Bank of Nigeria, DBN, Bank of Industry, then Sweden will make one or two arrangements. The federal government will draw some billions here and there. These are the only way they are getting money. But in those countries that I've mentioned, they are highlighting how they are able to bring their informal sector into their formal sector economy that is making the economy to grow. If not that recently that Nigerian Bureau of Statistics begin to calculate some aspect of our informal sector into our GDP. That's why our GDP was able to rise about $377 billion as our GDP. But guess what? If they have not done that in a way, that would never happen. And guess what? Again, that has not been accurately captured because we have over 400,000 small businesses that are in Nigeria, but nobody to support them to grow. So the clear case is this. In those two countries, Egypt and South Africa, there is a way that the government ensures that informal sector doesn't remain informal. What I mean informal is this, for the benefit of people listening to us.
Right.
The informal sector are those people who are doing business outside the registration with government, outside opportunity to pay a desirable tax, and outside the opportunity to even enjoy government policy in the area of infrastructure and others. But one way or the other, they are contributing to the economy. So, but in Egypt and South Africa, government doesn't allow those kind of business to stay too long on informal sector. They bring them up. And they copy all these styles from where? They copy it from China and India. Because China and India experiment how to bring out the informal sector into the formal sector. But in Nigeria, we have divided our economic system. We continue to have informal sector and informal sector. Meanwhile, in other countries, they allow the informal sector to emerge and move into the formal sector. So the other formal sector will be growing, other small business growing, and they'll be replacing the ones that move into the formal sector. And that's how the economy moves. And even in the case of, that's what they also do. But in the case of Nigeria, we're here to engage in that. And that's why the economy will continue to grow the way it is. And it will not have any translatable impact on ordinary people. Guess what? If the informal sector is, as the formal sector is moving, nobody will complain about there's no job. Because the informal sector will be providing jobs for people.
Okay.
But in the case of Nigeria, informal sector doesn't provide jobs. But in those countries we have mentioned, informal sector provides jobs one way or the other for their people.
So, is it really that we're having, an absence of visionary leadership in terms of steering our economic affairs, or we are not just ripe, in terms of trying to merge the informal sector with the formal sector, by way of creating jobs and allowing these, businesses in the informal sector to thrive? Do we really, put this blame on the president, the leadership of or the Minister of Finance? Who do we really apportion this blame on, or to?
I think you are limiting your concentration at the federal level. What about the state government? I think the blame should go around. It should be an umbrella blame from the president to all the cabinet policy officials, the CBN, then down to the state government, to all its commissioners, then down to the local government, to all its councilmen, because all these supposed to work together afloat. See, in South Africa and Egypt, economic policy is not left at the central level. It's not left for the federal government alone. Economic policy is centrally done, then decentralized, implemented. You understand what I mean?
Right.
It is centrally put out, but it is decentralized implemented. In the sense that when the federal government initiates a particular economic policy, the subnational, that is the state government, the local government, need to implement it at their own level. But what we have is this: the federal government is implementing policy. The state government are doing something else different. They are only interested in that economic policy when they discover that there was going to be some slush fund. There's going to be some money to be given to business. That's what the state government. And we have 10,000 small businesses in Nasarawa State, and we have 15,000 small businesses in Cross River State. Oh, we have 20,000 small businesses in Lagos State. And because of what? Because of the slush fund, the funding that will come from the government. And that's what has been happening for this.
All right. Adefalarin Olamilekon there. The network is somewhat trying to play funny or smart with us on the show this morning, but we are unbothered at this point in time. We'll make efforts to link up with him again. But in the meantime, you can be part of a conversation, dear listener, even as we reflect on the progression of events, looking at Nigeria's economy from the 1960s up until this very point in time. What exactly has changed, the challenges, and of course the prospects? Okay. You can leave a message or call in and be part of a conversation. Call 09073530044 or 09087668888. Adefalarin, good to have you back.
All right, now I'm here.
All right. I'd like us to beam our searchlight on the oil boom. From the 1970s up until the 1980s, the discovery of oil in commercial quantities, by the 1970s, somewhat changed the economic landscape. We saw increase. Help us get sense really why it's been a bit of a Herculean task for the government to diversify the economy in such a way that we look beyond oil.
Interesting, I would say. It has been an issue, not just under President Buhari to diversify the economy. The Nigerian economy started emerging under President Obasanjo. Then when Yar'Adua came to power, he also tried through his 7-point agenda, but he could not succeed on it. Then President Jonathan also came with diversification of the economy. He was so strong on it, but it was Buhari that took it headlong to diversify the economy. But the theory has been that we are only looking at agriculture as a measure of diversification of our economy, which is quite good. Everybody applaud that we should diversify our economy through agriculture. But we left it as just food production alone. And diversification of the economy, food production is limited to food consumption. For me, where there are other sources that we can get for just producing all those food crops in the way that we can turn them to semi-products, food products, and complementary products that we can export across Nigeria and turn to so many things. But at the point in time, we discovered that wasn't working under President Buhari. Then President Tinubu is here. There's no trying diversification, but the diversification is on the entire non-oil sector, but it focuses on fiscal policy as well as diversification. Whereby he's trying to encourage businesses to be established, he's trying to encourage manufacturing sector, then to tax them is one of his own measures of diversification. But he also promised something in his last outing about industrialization of the Nigeria economy. For me, what has been the challenge is not just because there is lack of policy. What has been the challenge is that we are trying as much as possible to diversify, but we are not looking at the structural deficit in an economy that must support diversification. We still have issue of power supply. We still have issue of infrastructure deficit in road transportation, logistics, and we still have security. So when you talk about diversification, but we're not tackling other factors that will hinder the success of that diversification, will not get anywhere. And guess what? I hope you are still with me.
Yes, please.
Sir, guess what? This is what is happening. Government wants to diversify. How much of participation is the private sector engaged when it comes to diversification? And this is a government that is not ready to establish enterprise. This is a government that is not ready to establish manufacturing sector or big gigantic national assets to carry that diversification. So when you want to do something of much of diversification, engage the private sector. That's why the informal sector is very key to economic diversification. I wish we have used the model of Egypt and South Africa and China and India, whereby they make sure that informal sector migrate into their formal sector. Diversification would have been easy for Nigeria. And unfortunately, we are a nation of buying and selling. We allow trading, just buying and selling, to be one of the major economic means of livelihood for our people. So we need to move to diversification. And moving to diversification means we need to move to manufacturing diversification, not buying and selling. Because what the government is thinking through their policy is a buying and selling diversification that focus on company established and they begin to tax them. But let's look at a situation where it will be a diversification that focus on manufacturing of goods and services. Although I also applaud the current government right from during the time of late President Buhari time, whereby they are now supporting natural state. For instance, we're having two gigantic, one of the two biggest lithium manufacturing in Africa, which is quite good. That's a diversification. But what I'm trying to draw out is that our diversification should not be for buying and selling, importation of goods and services, but it should be for manufacturing. And that's the way to go. Because in doing Buhari time, where we missed it was that we focus on agriculture, but we never focus on agriculture to meet the platform for manufacturing of goods and services in Nigeria. And we must reverse that so that we can really enjoy economic diversification that we're taking a look at currently.
All right, you've made how will I put it now? You've referenced the previous administration for a number of reasons, right? But before I ask you the next question, let's take this call and hear what this caller has got to say. Hello and good morning.
Hello, good morning, Omoise.
Good morning, good to have you.
The Prince, the Queen.
Thank you.
The speaker for the people. And I greet our guest, Adefolari.
Right.
He's always a man of precise and...
Tell us your name and your location.
My name, I'm Felix from Lambata.
All right.
Felix from Lambata.
All right, please go ahead.
Until our leaders think about industrialization, well, we are going nowhere. The definition of diversification address for proper industrialization of the country. If the country is not industrialized, we will continue to be a consuming nation. And as a consuming nation, no amount of diversification can take us anywhere. Until we are able to produce the things we consume ourselves and then these things to other countries. So our leader, we have what it takes. We have the wherewithal, we have the financial resources, financial and natural human resources to do it. So what we are saying is this: corruption must be addressed frontally to forestall anything that will affect industrialization of this country. Until this country is properly industrialized and all the structural deficits that we can see are addressed, we will continue to move around and around the corner.
All right.
That's what I have to say. Almost. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Felix, for your contribution right there. Adefolari, I would have you react to what Felix, just said, but I think I just have to squeeze in this call before I ask, the next question. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Yes, what's your name and where you're calling from?
I'm calling from Suleja, Niger State. My name is Comrade Salis on the line.
All right, Comrade, good to have you. Please go ahead.
For me, Nigeria is a good country. We have everything to grow. But our problem is very simple. Our leaders, and the way they manage this democracy they bring to us, when we are practicing, they have turned it to money democracy, business democracy. All of them, they put money and rig elections or buy vote, put their money. After winning the election, they want to make more money. That's the problem, number one. What is the problem now is that to get solution for this country is a law. And who's going to make this law for you? It's the same people that are in the office. So we have a lot of problems on hand. To business to drive in this country, first of all, power. Nobody going to talk about power in this country. And when you are bringing investors to this country or industry, what is going to help the industry is power, electricity. We don't have enough electricity to even like South Africa, the rest of Africa country. Egypt, they have the quality electricity. Even you not give money to any industrial business, they can drive in this country. But where they violate the electricity and our leaders, because of corruptions, they are not here to do anything. They put business, they make it as a business in this country to make more money and go to another country and invest. So they leave us to be poor and poor. Only God Almighty will save us from the hand of our leaders.
All right. Comrade, thank you so much for your contribution right there. Mr. Adefolari, I'm afraid I'll have to keep you on the line a little further. We need to go pay some bills. When we come back, the conversation will continue. Please bear with us.
Right, you need confirm protection, no, for your engine, no. Make a mobile, make it mobile, no, make it mobile, yeah. Anywhere you there, your motor deserve to be number one, yo. Make it mobile, no, make it mobile, yeah. You carry the go, make everybody join me, say, make it mobile.
Make you go with the best.
Make it mobile.
Things they happen for our community, eh?
Now I can recoup back all the money I have spent on this annoying family.
Hey, yeah, that woman own don't finish.
My dear, let's go and greet them, okay?
Join Media Coalition and Awareness to hold trafficking, MICAS, on I Wish I Knew radio drama and program every Saturday at 10 a.m. on Eagles 102.3 FM Abuja. Join us to kick human trafficking out of our society. I Wish I Knew radio drama and program is brought to you by MICAS and funded by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark.
Eagles 102.3 Abuja.
All right, we are back. Thank you so much for staying with us. If you are just joining us, this is Eagles Outlook live on Eagles FM 102.3 Abuja, and we're exploring highlights of Nigeria's economy since the 1960s. I still have my guest on the line, Adefolarin Olamileko, and he is an economic expert. And together, we are, exploring the success, stories recorded, from the 1960 era, and what has actually changed in this 21st century. Our studio lines are still very active, and would like to encourage you, listener on the other side of the radio, to call in to share your thoughts with us. Bearing in mind that we have an economic expert with us on the show today, so he might just maybe change your perception, with regards to the progression of events in Nigeria, looking especially at the economy. The numbers to call are 09073530044 or 09087668888. You can also leave a message or a voice note on the WhatsApp portal, and the WhatsApp portal number is 09097054450. For those watching us live on YouTube and Facebook, you can as well leave a message, and we'll be very glad to acknowledge your thoughts. Adefolarin, thank you so much for staying on the line.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, before I have you, respond to the contributions made by Felix and Comrade Salisu a while ago, you actually have been able to reference the previous administration under former president, of blessed memory, Muhammadu Buhari, and you spoke to a number of issues in terms of trying to revive agriculture as another means of, sustaining Nigeria's economy. We recall very clearly that the former president, late Muhammadu Buhari, may he so rest in peace, broke a record under his administration at the time, looking at the rice pyramid, right, Mr. Adefolarin?
Exactly.
What exactly
it's
is
interesting
the yes? What exactly is the latest update with that rice pyramid, and why are we still having food insecurity in Nigeria?
So it's so unfortunate that the rice pyramid, as laudable, as precious, as worthy as that policy was under late President Buhari, and initiated under the CBN anchor borrower, it was so appalling that it was abused by both government officials and the former central bank governor, as well as so many politicians who were involved themselves in it. And I will not forget to mention different farmers associations that collected that money at that point in time. Over 700 billion naira was expanded or thereabout into that particular engagement. But up to now, nobody can really pinpoint. Although we saw some rice being produced in different states, but the challenge is that those rice were not produced at a finished level. It was just the packed rice that was produced. So it was not meant for mailing, where it will now be washed, now be turned to finished rice, and that's where the problem started. And you could recall that the people who are involved could not account for those rice paddies that are supposed to take to the rice mailing center and turn them into a finished rice and sell to Nigeria. But before we know it, all those products were hidden somewhere, and now nobody talk about it. But right now, from what I've gotten so far from CBN, they are going after people who collected those money, and they have been recovering part of that money. So a lot of them are still out there. They are yet to pay that money to Central Bank of Nigeria. And that's what I will give you on the update of the rice pyramid or that we had. But it's supposed to say it was abused by politicians, central bank officials, as well as the APC members who are then in the Ministry of Agriculture at that point in time. So they messed up everything. And that's why this current government, if you recall that when this UCDM governor came in, he said for him, he's not going into any pseudo arrangement with anybody to be giving anybody money for anything. He's not doing that. And that's why you see that many people are even like farmers across Nigeria are comparing him to the former CBN governor and saying CBN was giving money to farmers. Why wouldn't he also give money to farmers? When they knew that even when the money was given to them, most of them didn't return the money back to the government. So that has been the update from that particular exercise. And the current government is not interested in giving anybody money. Even though they are buying tractors, who they are giving, they are not giving it direct to farmers. They are giving it to states, and states will now apply those farming tools, tractors to their farmers in their respective states. And that's what the current government is doing. So there won't be any lack of accountability. That when the federal government wants to ask, we gave a particular state 10 tractors. Where are the 10 tractors? It is the state government that will answer that call. Not like the one we had before, where government was giving association of agricultural association all these tools, all this material. For now, they will just be certainty between us.
Okay. Mr. Defalarin, in the early 60s, agriculture was the mainstay of the economy, and it indeed accounted for a large proportion of the GDP, and almost 100% of, foreign exchange earnings, right? It's 21st century. It appears agriculture is no longer the mainstay of the economy. So is oil still our mainstay?
Very interesting. But we need to dissect this particular aspect. I got the latest information given by NBS on our GDP. In the entire 100% of our economic growth for second quarter, oil contributed 20.48%. Agriculture contributed about 19.22%. Not that agriculture is not contributing at all. What we have had is that, the Nigerian economy, as a way, have also evolved. I complain about the diversification exercise that the government is carrying out without looking at how to turn those agricultural products into finished products that can also be exported, not just for food consumption alone. But we have discovered that the non-oil sector, which also includes agriculture, is contributing to our economy in a way. And that has also helped us. And if you also recall that the crude oil that is contributing majorly, over 85%, is also having its own problem. But the non-oil sector, which includes ICT, transportation, which also includes logistics, entertainment, agriculture, and financial sector, are contributing, alongside mining, are contributing to the economy the way it's supposed to be currently. But oil is still the major one. But we are seeing a competitive level in terms of individual or sectorial contribution of all these economic sectors. Like I earlier pointed out, it was just 20.48% that crude oil contributed to Nigerian economy in second quarter. Agriculture contributed about 19% thereabout. So we are having a competitive contribution coming from them. But we put it side by side. The non-oil sector, which includes agriculture, entertainment, financial sector, are contributing larger chunks to our economy as we speak right now. But not like oil. The only thing oil is doing is this. Oil is giving bigger receipt revenue. But guess what again, obviously? There's a dimension of what other sectors are contributing. Right. Just in the last speech of the president, you read what he said when he said over 3.6 trillion was going as revenue. You know that chunk of revenue, about 48% of it comes from non-oil sector. About 42% comes from oil sector. Then the rest comes from government borrowing and the rest of them that added to the government revenue. So, receipts from enterprise, the government GEO, the government-owned enterprise, who are bringing in their little profit into the government revenue. So that's to tell you that the non-oil sector is contributing, but the crude oil and non-oil sector are contributing. But the non-oil sector is giving the crude oil sector a fight for its money when it comes to revenue generation for the Nigerian economy.
All right, Adefalarin, indeed, there is so much to talk about, with a lot to take in, and whenever we have you on the Eagles Outlook, breakfast show, you always leave us with very deep revelations, as far as the affairs of the economy is concerned. But let's not talk about the challenges that are still persistent in this, present administration, because that is perhaps the reason why a number of Nigerians are expressing so much dissatisfaction with the president's independence anniversary, speech, which was delivered on Wednesday. You look at poverty and inequality, with a significant portion of the population living below the poverty line. In the 1980s, were there similar, issues in the 1980s, the 70s, the 60s, and what exactly were the measures that were implemented or introduced at a time to deal with, issues like this, from poverty to inequality, just like we are faced with at this point in time?
Very simple. The more the population grows, the more the population of the poor also grows. The more the population of the rich grows, the more the population of the more the indicator of inequality also grows. And why did I say that? Now, in the 70s, in the 80s, not that there were no poor Nigerians, there were poor Nigerians. But the issue that is different within that point in time and now is that the population has grown. The population of the poor at that time was not addressed. I was in the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s. The government, successive government from that time to date, we are trying as much as possible to bring people out of poverty into the wealth bracket. We would have been complaining about poverty. But guess what? They were not doing as we expected. Rather, the gap became wider. Because what we are seeing on the global scale is this, or what we are seeing on the national scale is this. The rich is getting richer, the poor is getting poorer. The population of the rich is growing, the population of the poor is growing. And the middle line is that the policies that are supposed to address or bringing people out of poverty is not being addressed in a very disruptive way. What I mean disruptive is this: if you want to take out poverty from any nation, you have to be disruptive in your policy. But we don't have such disruptive policy in place. And that's where inequality grew. Because if you only want to tackle poverty, you must disrupt inequality. And what is inequality? It's just by, let's say for instance, government create a policy to ensure that the poor have access to education, have access to health, have access to good roads, have access to electricity. But those policies is not done. So what do you think will happen to the people? The poverty line will continue to increase. Meanwhile, the rich will continue to get richer because the provision of those services to the poor, it is carried out by the rich. And the more the poor is increasing, or the more the poor people are increasing, the more services will be demanding. And that is just it. We must understand. But although if you want to analyze poverty, I don't like talking about poverty from just a national perspective alone. It is a global scale. And there's a great foundation on it that it is based on the global capitalism system that allow exploitation and manipulation to exist in the world. So for capitalism or global capitalism, it's all about let the poor remain poor and let the rich continue to be rich. And that's how it is. It is all about exploitation and manipulation. And in the case of Nigeria, it is also the same thing. And this is carried out by elite in power. I've discussed this on this platform before, that we have 6 classes in Nigeria. The powerful elite who belong to the political class. We have the economic class. We have the intellectual class. Then we have the middle class. Then we have the upper middle class. Before we now have the bottom of the bottom and the poor of the poor. These are the 6 classes that exist in Nigeria. And each of them depend on each other. The powerful elite depend on ensuring that the policies they are put in place continue to keep the economic class agitated to continue to do economic policy. Like the Dangote of this world now, with all that he is doing, it can make profit. And now they make profit. Which the elite class will depend on. And the elite class depend on his policy, on his profit, because he must pay taxes. It is that tax that is paying, that thing that is paying, that the elite class is using to sustain themselves. I don't know whether I get this analysis.
Okay. So
when businessmen pay taxes, or where government raise revenue through selling of crude oil, that money they use, that money they generate, that is the money they sustain themselves. So when we talk about corruption, it is that money they use to sustain themselves by stealing to political offices. Then intellectuals who are lecturers, professors in university, or leaders of NGO, they also depend on the economic class and the political class to begin to agitate here and there. And the government is not doing this. And what will the government do? They will initiate one policy. They will call the businessman. They will call the elite. They will call the NGOs. They They will do the trick. They will do this. They will release some money to them. They will keep quiet. Then it comes to the middle class. The middle class people are the one working in a bank, working in insurance center, working in stock market, doing trading, doing this one, including my own self. So we also depend on the intellectual class who will now say, okay, there's a project here, there's a research here, there's a talking point here. You also take this and take that. You also sustain yourself. Then the ones that are below the lower class, they also depend on us, the market woman, the trader, all of them. They depend on everybody to come and buy in the market. At the end of when they buy, they pay for our product and the rest of them. They also make their money. Then the poor also depend on the lower class, who also they have to pick from. That's how the class is in Nigeria. So the elite depend on our resources and the profits and taxes that businesses will pay. And it flows like that. And it's also a global scenario. It's a global phenomenon. Okay. So to really kick out poverty, it's a tough work. And you recall, how many things? Are you with me?
Yes, please, I'm with you.
The two holy books, including other sensitive books across the world,
right.
I've told you that the poor will always remain among us. How are we going to tackle poverty?
So poverty has come to stay. We just have to accommodate it however way we can.
The thing is that there's a system that China did which eliminates all those classes that I've just mentioned that exist in Nigeria. In China, there's nothing like upper class, middle class. They make sure that they only have political class, the Chinese Communist Party and their leadership, through the unions, through the Workers' Party and the people. And the people are the rural farmers, the traders and the rest of them. They ensure that everything flows. Okay. Land ownership and the rest of them, the government provides for them. And the informal sector in China thrives. Thrives because government ensure that they grow. Support them. But here in Nigeria, when you give money for someone to go and give for people in the village, or to go and give for people in the village. So,
okay. Mr. Defalari.
Hello.
Yes, are you there? I'm sorry, but I just have to butt you real quick because our time is fast spent already. You said something about Dangote being a capitalist, right? And earlier you made reference to the South African economy and that of Egypt as well, because it's like a capitalist-driven economy, right? And that's why they are making progress as opposed to what is obtainable in Nigeria. So if we have 200s of Dangote who are also capitalist-oriented, who at the end of the day would also pay taxes to the federal government, would that also rub off on the economy positively in the long run?
If they pay their taxes and the political elite who are holding on the governance structure of the country use that money and change the economy and impact the people without stealing it, then there will be changes. In those two countries that we are making reference to, including China and India, what is happening in Nigeria is also there. The elite, the capitalists pay their taxes. The government do business and make profit. But they use it for development. In our own case, it is not like that. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu just gave out to Bank of Industry 200 billion to small businesses in Nigeria. How many of those businesses got that money? Through his credit corp, over 153,000 people are getting the credit corp loans. How many people are getting it? The next one, the student loan, how many people are really getting it as expected? It's not even enough. So what I'm trying to say is that we are really getting revenue, we are making more money, either through taxes, either through profit or government-owned enterprise, but it is not getting down to the people as expected because it gets stuck in the middle. And when it gets stuck in the middle, as a result of corruption, imagine government releasing money to all states to go and share. I'll give you a typical example. In National State that I reside, the NCare that the federal government, FG care that they gave, 25,000 naira to each widow, very people in all states in Nigeria. You know that up to now, the local government is still claiming that they want to give some people money. Meanwhile, the thing has ended. The 25,000 naira period that are giving each person 25,000 3 times for 3 months has closed. But they're still telling people that they will give them. Meanwhile, because they use their data, they collected their data and goof up their own data that they have over how many thousand people in local government that they want to give money. And they don't know that federal government understands all these gimmicks. Hope you understand what I'm trying to point out. So until you understand, we need to be using the finance, the fund appropriately for the people, and that's how we can get it right.
Okay. Now, when you look at the inflation, indices as also a decider, in terms of economic growth, Nigeria had a single-digit inflation briefly in the early 1960s, but it quickly rose above this mark, and the double-digit inflation became, common, in the decades after. I know this administration under President Bola Tinubu is quite optimistic in terms of reducing the nation's inflation rate drastically. Is that still possible, Mr. Adefolarin? And then secondly, even as we look forward to practicing some of the economic reforms that have been, introduced under this administration, like the tax reform bills and all of that. I mean, as we anticipate its, practice, right, or full implementation come next year, early next year, if I'm not mistaken. What possible impact do you think that would actually have on the economy in such a way that around this time next year we don't have to tell the same story of, there's little or nothing to celebrate?
Interesting. First and foremost, the inflation aspect. I will tell you that there are different categories of inflation in Nigeria. I think it was on your show. This show, I enumerated and analyzed inflation of Nigeria.
Right.
See, the inflation in Kogi State is different from inflation in Abuja. Now, inflation in Abuja, in Gwagwalada, is different from inflation in Kubwa. The inflation in Kubwa is different from inflation in Yanya. The inflation in Nasarawa in last year is different from inflation in Maraba, where I am. And inflation in Maraba is different from inflation in Keti. We must understand this level of inflation that we have in Nigeria. Although, when it comes to the documentation, government will achieve their even if one figure point or 0 point inflation. But when it comes to the street level, local level inflation, they can't achieve it. I'll give you a typical example. If you go to Masaka Market now, Masaka Market today is holding Friday. You go and buy a mudu of rice for 1,500 naira. If I retail person, when you come down to your house, to your small shop, you cannot sell it at 1,500 naira. They will sell it at 1,700 naira. If it is by cup, they will not, if they buy the cup, maybe 2,250, they will not sell it at 2,250, they will sell it at 3,350. That is inflation. Because if anything adding to a particular price that you have gotten, if you get it at 10 naira, you now add 1 naira. That 1 naira is inflation. So there are different inflation across Nigeria. But for the government, definitely they will get their inflation figure right on paper, but they cannot get it right on the street-wise when it comes to the market mechanism or local market or rural market mechanism. Then on the aspect of the second question that you asked about tax reform, the tax reform is not new. It is not something dramatic that everybody is, I hear some people talking about. It is not new. The tax has been here with us. The only difference right now is that they harmonize the tax. They have a centralized collection pool, and they want to decentralize it after collection. So where we have issue is this: if after collection they give it to all this, because what we must also understand about this tax is that the tax is not going to federal government alone. So people should not be thinking that it is Tinubu that will tax everybody. If you finish collecting it, it will give to each state according to their percentage. One, what are those percentage? Your population, equality, and derivation.
Right.
So when they give a particular state the tax that belongs to it, we should begin to tax the say, where is the money that was given to you at the end of this month? It is not just federal government. So people should start having that emotional attachment that it is a general agreement that they should have a central pool of Nigerian Revenue Service, NRS, who should be collecting all the taxes, harmonize them, and distribute it according to population, equity, and derivation. That is all. The only problem we have is that if that tax is collected and they are not using it, just like I stated earlier, if the political elite in charge of our governance and economic system collect those money and begin to use it to enjoy themselves, begin to fly here and there, they will not have any positive effect. But if they use it accurately for development purpose, definitely there will be positive impact of it.
Okay. All right. Time is not our friend. I'm very sure that we can go on and on with this conversation even till tomorrow. Adefolarin. By the way, let me just intimate you on a message that was sent from James. James from Suleja. He says, good morning, Ife for short, and our very own Olamilekon. The rice pyramid was fraudulent, scheme where wooden platforms were built and rice bags arranged on top to make it seem like it was all a heap of rice. The level of fraud and scam associated with so many of the policies at the time was monumental. This is just as reaction to the question I asked earlier concerning the rice pyramid under the previous administration. Mr. Adefolari, I really wish you can go on and on. Truly, there are other questions that time would not allow for us to really, speak to. But let's hope that subsequently would, have you come on here to also share more insight on these issues as they affect our economy as a nation. Adefolari Olamilekon is an economic expert. Thank you so much for spending part of your time with us on the show today.
Thanks for having me. And it's very good morning to all our listeners out there.
Right.
Thank you so much.
All right. And to those who called in, those who missed their calls, those who took their time to just monitor the conversation, I'm sure that it's been educative and expository for you. This is what you get, from us every weekday, 9 to 9:55 a.m. Right. Thank you so much for spending part of your time and keeping us company on the show this morning. I'd like to state that the views expressed were not influenced by Eagles FM 102.3 Abuja. Please have a playback, on YouTube and Facebook. Leave a comment or any question bothering your mind, and best believe that, would actually acknowledge your thought and also profile, clarifications when necessary. My name is Omoefe.